On the last video in this series, you guys had some really good suggestions, so I thought I'd make a video featuring some. It's always cool to learn about and research weird vehicles, and I think a lot of them would be good additions to War Thunder. If you have suggestions of your own, make sure to leave them in a comment. I'll try to keep incorporating them into these videos. Without further ado, let's jump into it. One comment was asking about American oscillating tanks. Oscillating turrets are a pretty neat concept, so let's talk about those first. They're normally associated with France, since they experimented with them the most, and even used them on some service vehicles, namely the AMX-13 and EBR. Surprisingly, the US Army actually experimented with them quite a lot. You guys are probably familiar with the T-54E1, but there was another project that preceded it, called the T-69 medium tank. It was an offshoot of the T-42 medium tank, which would eventually become the M47, kind of. To create the M47, they combined the T-42 turret and M46 hull, but we're getting off track. It was recognized that automatic loading was extremely potent, but autoloaders were still finicky. At that time, there was pretty much only one way to make a reliable autoloader, and that was to put it in an oscillating turret, since the gun's position was fixed. The gun was essentially the same one used by the M48. Using an 8-round magazine, the fire rate was clocked between 1.8 and 3.3 seconds per round, depending on the ammo loadout. This document here states 2 seconds though, so let's just go with that. Unlike the AMX-13, this vehicle had a dedicated loader. His job was to replenish the magazine. Strangely enough, the entire roof of the turret could be opened. This was done to make maintenance on the autoloader easier, though it could also be used to escape the vehicle. In terms of armor, it was pretty similar to the T-54E1. The armor was a bit thinner, but the angles were more generous. At about 34 metric tons, it was actually fairly light, though it only had 500 horsepower. Its transmission was similar to the M46's, so its reverse speed would be fairly good. Its turret traversed at 24 degrees per second, and had 9 degrees of gun depression. I think it would be a good 8.0 or 8.3 vehicle, probably as a premium or event reward. Next is a Japanese wheeled fighting vehicle, simply named the Close Combat Vehicle or CCV. If you've been following my channel for a while, then you know how much I love CTA guns. Plenty of nations have experimented with them somewhat recently, and Japan is no exception. CTA guns have several advantages, with the most prominent being high fire rates and reliable operation. This makes them greatest multi-purpose autocannons, which the CCV is a platform for. Using a 40mm CTA gun, it was supposed to replace the Type 89 and Type 87, though ultimately was never accepted. Using both APF-SDS and high explosive, it would have been used to engage infantry, armored vehicles, and aircraft. It appears that the HE could be programmed, or had a proximity fuse, so it would be quite strong. I can only guess based on the size of the case, but I think the APF-SDS would be quite potent, possibly better than the CV90s. The fire rate was 750 RPM, which is frankly insane. There aren't any concrete figures for its mobility, but it was a wheeled vehicle from the 90s, so it's probably pretty good. As far as where it would be placed in War Thunder, I honestly have no clue. Next up is this, the AS-90 on a T-72 chassis. The AS-90 was supposed to replace Britain's aging artillery fleet, and it eventually succeeded. It had a 155mm cannon, and thanks to an automatic feeding system, it could fire 3 rounds in a 10-second burst. Of course, this wasn't sustainable. It could fire 1 round every 10 seconds for 3 minutes, and I think that's how fast it would be in War Thunder. But why this variant specifically? Simply because it looks very, very dumb. That and the idea of artillery with composites funny to me. If you're wondering why this was made in the first place, it was part of a proposed deal with India. And finally, another American vehicle, the M113 with Emerson ground-launched Hellfire turret, or M113 GLH for short. Technically it's the heavy variant of the turret, so GLHH, but whatever. Anyway, it's pretty much exactly what the name describes. It's an M113 with a 2-man turret, with the turret having 2 pods of 4 Hellfire missiles on each side. It also appears to have a thermal imager and smoke grenade dischargers. Given it was finished around 1991 or so, it's possible it used anything from the 114A to the 114F, though the 114F might be overkill. In War Thunder, even the 114B has over a meter of penetration, and given it's based on the M113, I don't see this vehicle having an incredibly high BR. Personally, I would place it at around 9.7 or so. It could be placed in the tank destroyer line, though it would be the same BR as the Striker. It wouldn't fill any BR gaps, but it would fill some capability gaps. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys. Remember, leave a vehicle suggestion in a comment. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one.
You